Welcome to another episode. It is finally time. After several weeks and months of waiting, we're at the track, as you can probably hear. Let's go take this Wisefab for its first test drive. As expected, Wisefab is next level. It's not without error. It doesn't really want to self-steer. I don't know if that's because all the heim joints are so stiff and they need to break in. So before I go changing a bunch of stuff on it, trying to mess with it, I'm gonna let it cool down right now. Heat cycle those tires, but just gonna run it a little bit and see if it'll loosen up and kind of play nice. And then if not, then we'll start messing with stuff. So we're getting into Friday night here, and the more I ran the car, the less I thought maybe it was just me needing to get used to the car or the car needing to break in. And the more I started thinking maybe I had something installed or set up wrong. The front of the car was completely numb. Like, you couldn't tell what it was doing. There was no feeling whatsoever, and it wouldn't self-steer for anything. Like, it just wouldn't. It was so slow reacting, and it was just so hard to drive. And I was getting it around the track for the most part, but I was making a lot of mistakes that I wouldn't normally be making, and I was relying on the handbrake a lot to get the car to move around. And so at this point, I'm just starting to think, all right, what did I mess up, and how do I fix it? You can see, like, initiating here, the car just pushes. I couldn't tell which way the front tires were actually facing, and it was a mess. So at this point, I'm really just, instead of driving the car by feel like you normally do, I started trying to drive it like you would drive on the sim, where you can't feel the car, and you're just going based off how the car is pointing. And it was working, and obviously not there. It was another spin. But I was kind of getting the hang of it, and then the next morning, after the first session, it hit me what I had done wrong, and that'll be a little bit later in the video. So, it's a little better each lap until I figured that out, and then the car was completely different. It was so much better, just wait. Day 2. We're on for the first grid session, and boys must have partied pretty hard last night because no one's down here. We're just hanging out. Sidekick is up. She's ready to go. I think I might have figured out some stuff with the car last night. I'll explain that later. But yeah, we're gonna get into Day 2. Hopefully by the time we're done with this, the concession stand's open. Give me some food. Just hang out. Hopefully the rain stays away. The chance keeps going down, but here, if there's any chance, it's probably gonna rain. So after the monsoon came through and then the wind destroyed my tent, made some changes on the car. So if you watched the last video when we put the WiseFab stuff all in, the upper control arm had that gap where it mounts on, so we put that nice thick washer in there. So I moved that from the front side to the back side, essentially adding caster, and it made a huge difference. Went back out, the car feels so much better now. So we got a bunch of runs in. Right now we're gonna go get some food and wait around for the next session. So if you watch here, the main screen is running the car set up wrong with essentially no caster, and the picture is once we figured it out. And you can see the way the wheel is more free, it moves around, and I'm kind of letting the car do its thing instead of trying to force it around. Like it's a huge difference. I thought this was a pretty interesting comparison. You can see how bad I'm fighting it in the box. first, but if you look right there on the track, you see the glare. Somebody had oiled down the track from here on the rest of the way, and there was just immediately no grip on the track. I didn't realize it when I come through the first time. Probably should have shut it down. Really almost wrecked my car right here. So at this point I decided we're going to quit while we're ahead, put the car on the trailer, and just hang out with the boys and enjoy watching the rest of the night. Day 3, so we're actually in the truck. So, it's a pretty interesting end of the night last night. We went out the second to last A group session, got like 2 runs in, and the pin that holds my e-brake handle together fell out and I vanished into the void. Couldn't find the right nut. I found one that was the right size but the wrong thread, so a little ashamed to say I gave it a little bit of nature's Loctite to get back out there, but it was a little bit too long, so it was binding up.
but I managed to fix it with some electrical tape and go out again. Then we got linked back up with Matt and did maybe the worst run of the weekend, and I couldn't figure out why. And then we found out that somebody had oiled down the track, so at that point I was like, all right, I'm done. Put the car on the trailer and then went to watch the last A group session after we ran grid, and by then I was too cold to even do video. It sucked up here this weekend, so we're up on Sunday morning. It's another day of cold and possible rain, and I'm over it. So instead we're going to the local diner who does really good food, and then we're gonna roll home. So I guess that's gonna be the end of this video. A little bit early, but learned a bunch of stuff. Definitely getting the hang of the Wise Fab. I'm gonna enjoy that, and yeah, we're gonna get prepped to come back for summer and hit it hard.